Hello again and welcome on back to Top 5 Scary. I'm Taylor, your casual crypt keeper. I got something for you. We love a good alien story around Top 5 Scary, and the only thing we like more than an alien story is an alien abduction story. So let's take a look at some wild true stories from Redditors who claim they've been up in the air in a flying saucer. Let's take a listen to the top 5 people who mysteriously disappeared after a UFO sighting. Let me know down below which one of these stories enticed you the most. Now let's get right into it. Number 5, Great Aunt Eater. Our first story today is going to be this one shared to us from Reddit, in which this user posted a thread claiming that they had been abducted by aliens and that you should ask them anything. Let's take a listen to their story and see what we think, if it holds water or if it's just a tall tale. It happened about 3 years ago in a rural part of Virginia. I don't really remember it like a real memory, but more like a dream. That being said, no, I was not asleep. I was driving home from a friend's house when it happened. I can remember vaguely what they looked like and a few other things. When my memory kicks back in, I'm sitting outside the car on the side of the road. I have never told police and I never plan on it. The aliens I remember as looking rather reptilian. They weren't your cliche big heads, gray skin, but they were bipedal. Their craft I don't rightly remember, apart from the inside being very smooth and very bright above me. It is scary to think about, but I do remember a few things they did to me. I wore a mask of some sort and they pulled hairs. There was a minute buzzing I recall and a thing over the top of my head. There were several of them. When I woke up, I was fully clothed, beside my car, on the same road I was traveling on when I last remembered. I had no scars or puncture marks or any markings, so I don't think they injected me or anything. I wasn't gone for any large amount of time, only a few hours from what I guess, and I haven't told anyone but my brother who knows me. He was just baffled and then curious. Going through the thread, the Redditor does add some minor insight on some questions, even providing a crude diagram of one of the aliens. Unfortunately, not much more detail than that is known, but isn't that the case with all stories of unknown flying objects? They're unknown for a reason. And if you're looking for way more stories of unknown flying objects, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some to spare. We've been doing videos on aliens for a long time, my friends. So hit subscribe so you don't miss any of that. Please make sure you ring that little bell as well, and that way you'll get every one of our videos notified to you as soon as they go up. But do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more abduction stories for you coming right now. Number 4, Ethiopia's abduction. Alright, this next one is wild. Also from Reddit, take a little listen. In the 1960s in Ethiopia, my dad was a child at the time playing with his best friend Gabriel after school. They were playing in the fenced backyard of my dad's house. My dad turned his back for a second, then turned to look back at his friend, and Gabriel was gone. Now, it's important to note that my dad and Gabriel were both from the top 1% of Ethiopia's ruling class. My dad's father was Minister of Interior of Ethiopia, and Gabriel's father was a 4-star general of Ethiopia. The backyard Gabriel had disappeared from had 10-foot bricked walls with armed soldiers patrolling on the outside. A couple of hours pass. His parents, my dad's parents, and guards are searching, but nobody finds him. 48 hours pass. Now there's a nationwide search for this important kid. It's on the news. Police are searching door to door, describing him and what he was wearing when he disappeared. He was wearing a private school uniform. Helicopters even searched the countryside looking for him, but still nothing. A month passes, then 2, then 4. People start losing hope that he would ever be found and think the worst. Exactly 6 months to the day he disappeared, Gabriel appears back in my dad's backyard. He looked exactly the same as when he disappeared. And this is where things start to get weird. Once they confirmed he was okay, they start asking him where he'd been. He said a couple of nice men took him on a trip. He was in a white room that glowed, and other children were there from different countries. The white glowing room had no windows, and the doors disappeared into walls. There were buttons on the walls, and if someone pushed them, a bed would come out. He was then all of a sudden in a city that was glowing and clean, but with flying cars. He said there were people there, but they looked strange, like us, but different. One was a nice man who was still with him and took him to a tall building where they had to stay for a while. The man showed him a room for entertainment. Gabriel said he could push a button and the room itself would go places, including an open field, the beach, then the room itself would travel. He said after a couple hours, he was taken back to Ethiopia and appeared in the backyard. He thought he was only gone for a couple hours total. Obviously, no one believed him, and with Ethiopia being a very religious country, most adults around him thought that he had got possessed. Gabriel was even forced to see a priest to get the spirits out of him. My dad kept in contact with him. He got a doctorate in physics and I believe works in Holland these days. That's where the post concludes, but if that story is true, that sounds like one of the most wild abduction stories I've ever heard. Keeping someone for 6 months, but he thought it was just a few hours. Number 3. At an alien. I think this might be a fantasy for some of us. I know if you grew up with Halo, maybe this, seemed like a lifestyle. But take a listen to this next wild point when someone thinks they might have at an alien. Listen. A few months ago, I started having really weird dreams in which I was in a place I did not know, and I remember being really afraid. I kept it to myself for the longest time until I started noticing that I had bruising that I couldn't explain. They started on my arms and legs and then moved to my back. Most of them looked like perfect circles, like someone had poked me hard enough with an unsharpened pencil. The dreams kept coming and I started having really bad headaches. After a few weeks after the first dream, I started noticing bruising on my wife. Then one day I was in my bedroom and I noticed my pistol was out of place. I had one of those dreams the night before. So I took out the mag and I noticed there was a round missing. Now a little background here. I used to be a cop and I'm an NRA firearms instructor, so I am very familiar with firearms and I take great ensure that they are safe and ready. I asked my wife if she had touched the Glock and she said no. I took it apart and found what looked like powdered residue in the barrel. Now I started to freak out because someone had a pistol. After I found that it had been messed with, the dreams and the bruising stopped completely. I believe that my wife and I were being abducted. I further believe that it stopped after I tried to fight back and possibly at an alien in our house. I know it sounds odd, and I know I wouldn't believe it if someone else told me this story. It's part of the reason why I never tell anyone but a handful of close friends. Imagine, So you do it, you see an alien, you get abducted by one, you have this first contact moment. Not only that, but you shoot at an alien like you're Han Solo. You get to do the coolest thing any human being will ever do, and you're not even 100% sure if that happened. That is such a cruel twist of fate. Number 2, something impossible. Another one, guess from where? If you guessed Reddit, you're correct. Take a listen. I'm not sure what to think about this, but my friend who was in the car thinks it was an alien's. My friend and I were driving north from Kenosha, Wisconsin to his house about a half hour away. We had missed the on-ramp before, so we double checked that we're going the right way with my GPS. Now after a while, I notice a car has been tailgating me. I quickly matched the headlight pattern with that of an officer of the law, but my cruise control is set at the speed limit. After being nervous about this copper for about 5 minutes of following, he very suddenly changes lanes to our left and blasts past us to tailgate someone else a few lengths ahead. Now the cop freaked us out, but we were almost to our off-ramp, so we were looking for the sign, and then I see it. Welcome to Illinois. We didn't make any turns, we stayed on the freeway, and the section we were driving on didn't have any splits. There was absolutely no turning around, we were going north. But the freakiest part was I pulled over and started doing some Google Maps calculations. From the place we left, it took a half-hour driving south to get to the Illinois border. And we had started off going farther away, but it had only been 20 minutes. The landmarks we had passed going north were also more than 20 minutes away. In the time that had passed, we shouldn't have been able to see the landmarks or to drive to Illinois, even if we would have started off going south. My friend who was with me thinks it was an alien encounter. They picked us up and wanted different humans for some reason, but when they put us back, they put us on the correct freeway, only in the wrong location, facing the wrong direction. After we calmed down from our brains melting, the exact same thing happened with that same cop. We had turned around and headed back north, gotten tailed for a few minutes, and then they suddenly changed lanes to the left and blasted the accelerator to get up on somebody's bumper. Aliens? Improbable travel through time and space? Reality checkpoints? I don't have any other way to explain it. Something impossible happened to us. Oh yeah, that kind of stuff happens all the time. That's just the code in the Matrix glitching out a little bit. They should have a patch ready for that next month. You won't even notice the difference. And finally, number 1. My mom tells a story of her and her friend. Let's call her Lisa. When my mom and Lisa were teenagers, they were up on the roof of Lisa's house and they see a bright light in the sky. Next thing they know, the light is gone. Thing is, they think they've been on the roof for 15 minutes, but something like 3 hours passed. Now, my mom doesn't exactly remember about what happened during that time, and Lisa simply refuses to talk about it. She would answer my mom with things like, oh, I don't know, and drop it. Now, you ever hear mom say drop it? drop it. A couple months later, my mom moves away and loses contact with Lisa for a decade. They finally meet up, and immediately my mom notices that something odd is present about Lisa. She appears very distant, with a dreamy demeanor. After they talk for a bit, Lisa brings up the incident on the roof. My mom says she still doesn't really remember anything about it, but Lisa remembers. She remembers everything. She said that at first it was all in bits and pieces, and she couldn't remember any of it clearly. She was confused, scared, and wanted to avoid discussing it. Then, as time passed, she began to remember more of it. She remembers it all clearly, and she remembers the other 3 times she was abducted after that clearly as well. At first they paralyzed her somehow, and did all sorts of creepy experiments, but by the most recent time, no more probing, they were just talking to her. They didn't speak English or any other language, but she could understand everything they said. Apparently they told her all this stuff about space, Earth, and shockingly predicted things years beforehand, that she would get pregnant in a specific year, and it would be a stillborn, and that she would never have children again. They also told her that it was not their fault, and that they even made an attempt to save her from this, but they were unsuccessful. They said that they had abducted my mother another time after that first incident. Now my mom says she has no recollection of any other abductions, but she does have nightmares about being abducted, but she's almost sure that they're just that, nightmares. Anyway, Lisa tells my mom that every time she speaks with them, she comes to understand the divine truth more and more. When mom asks what that truth is, Lisa just says, "You'll know eventually." And she says that once she learned of the truth, everything became wonderful. Now my mom's seen her a few more times over the years, and she apparently is pretty normal. She doesn't obsess over alien stuff. She only ever brings it up in passing, so it's not a central part of her daily life. But you know, she did mention seeing the divine truth after being abducted several times, so I would say it's somewhat a part of her life. Anyway, my ghouls and goblins, that's about all she wrote for this one. You're a gem of an audience as always. Keep on creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one, okay? Take it easy now.